Please.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better. So let's go on. Yeah. So you said that
Okay.
one of the challenges is an intense competition.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So let's.
So personally, I don't think that I have at any point in time been um, faced with or been introduced to any service from any bank that is truly unique or that truly stands out from what everybody else is doing. For me to decide that I would either want to open an account there or perhaps even switch. At the moment, I bank mostly with Cal Bank. I do a bit of banking with Fidelity too. But the reason why I started with Cal Bank many years back was simply because from what I gathered from a few questions I asked, there were fewer queues in Cal banks than in many of the other banks. But I don't think that fewer queues should be the main reason why anybody makes a decision to save or invest with one bank. I think that the features or the products or more direct ways, more things that have more direct things to do with money should be the reason why somebody is to make a decision. But because the competition is so intense that nobody is really standing out, I just went with the one that will save me time. Whereas for me, that should have been a secondary matter instead of a primary one.
Fantastic explanation. Now, you see, please, as I said last week, when it comes to the notes, this is how we do it. It's co-creation, The points that we make is what we all write down as notes. So I'm sure you're jotting down some of the things that we're discussing. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, just like Michael just explained, the undifferentiated nature of the product and services of financial services, they're highly undifferentiated. And we know that in markets that are commoditized, i.e., sugar is sugar, all right? Salt is salt, bread is bread. Now, when you have a very highly commoditized, services, the competition is intense because there's nothing that actually, plugs consumer to move from one to the other. Because what is it that someone is actually offering so differently that you would say that they would have a competitive edge? They are almost, everybody selling the same thing. It's a loan. And the central bank determines the base rate, and that actually reflects in, what the interest rates are that people are supposed to pay. They have, just as we heard last week, there are similar or almost the same risk assessment, framework that they use, so there is nothing different. And except that maybe because of the layout of one bank, the queue, as Michael said, is less queue, and as a result, maybe some of us who are very too busy would not want to go and join a GCB queue that could take a long time for us to access our money. And so we may want to go to, Cowback. But otherwise, there is nothing differentiating any of them. And that ironically makes it very, very competitive in the sense that the consumer doesn't feel any jolt in moving from one end to the other, that they've heard that X bank or X financial services is doing fantastically well, and as a result, you see a sway of people moving towards them. Now, so that's a very good point. Undifferentiated product and services, ironically makes it much more competitive because of the kind of things that we've explained. Great point. Who else, please? We're discussing the challenges of marketing financial services. Those of us who have been put in the position to market financial services, what are some of the challenges that we face? And one of it is that there's nothing exciting about the product and services. They're almost all the same. And so when you're speaking to a customer or a consumer and trying to sway them, they say, what is new about you? What is so special about you that you want me to move my money from one to the other? I don't see anything special about you. And because of that, it makes it too competitive. Good point. Who else? Yes, Bridget. You want to say something?
I wanted to add to what Michael was saying.
Add, please. Yeah.
During our rebranding from Barclays to ABSA, some of the banks use Barclays leaving Ghana as a competitive edge to sway some of our customers to themselves.
Yeah.
And to some extent, it worked. They managed to get some, but it's not because I work with ABSA, but then we have different kinds of products for different segments, like our premier suits for the affluent sector. I mean, big people who don't have time to join queues. So that one, we have it at the Kimpiski. And with that particular product, a lot of people they are still keeping doing business with us. The prestige segment that I found myself to, there are no queues. So what he was saying about the cow bank thing, I've even opened an account for a cow bank manager.
Yeah.
So the prestige, there are a lot of different products that banks through innovation are coming up with them. So there are some competitive edge. Some are coming to us now.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. But again, so the question is that, the very topmost prestige, as you talked about, where there are no queues, actually sits at Kempinski, isn't it? So if the person is a very top echelon person, top class person, and lives around, is it Obojo, or let's say Amasaman and things, they've got to drive all the way to.
No, when you go to Seiko, we have the prestige suits. We sell both premier and prestige.
Okay.
High Street do, even Hatcho. We serve everybody. Saturdays they open for them. East Legon, we have a lot of branches strategically placed.
Okay, great.
And there was one thing that that affects us with respect to our loans.
Yeah.
We realized that one of the banks were offering certain companies like the MTN and Vodafone a lower percentage, a lower rate. To as low as 11%. And they were arguing that they've been able to persuade MTN to give them cheap liability by investing in their bank. So it has reduced the interest rate given to them, because when they lose on the asset front, they will gain through the liability mobilization. And it's really affecting us because you want to penetrate, and we are sticking to the Bank of Ghana regulation, the rate, and they have reduced their rate drastically down. So they were pushing some of our customers to their end.
Wow.
So it's one of the challenges that we face to at ABSA.
Have you guys resolved it? Or you are still discussing?
Yeah, we have reduced it. So now we've reduced our rates because of the COVID.
Okay. Great. Yeah, anyone has another point? So we are discussing challenges that is actually being faced within the financial sector, especially for those of us who are supposed to market the services and the product. And as Michael and Bridget has actually pointed out, the idea that there are not so much difference between the services, and then the idea that there is no clear-cut area that you could actually target to say this as the. Just a minute, Dr. Lord says come. Lord, yeah, at the office, I teach. You close, and so you will go to the village. Okay. Hey. Oh. Charlie, my condolences, man. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I will call you after class. Charlie, strong man. One of our colleagues, he just lost his father.
Oh.
Dr. Lord Mensa, he's in the finance department. He's my buddy. So just this morning, we were talking about his father wasn't well. So we were planning him going to the village, and right now, this afternoon, we're even discussing it. So he was going to get prepared to go to the village, and he just called me that the dad just passed. Sad news, but anyway, part of life. So at least the dad is an old person, so that's a good part of it. The bad part of it is about COVID and then money in your pocket. Anyway, okay, guys, let's continue. So, yeah. Who else?
Doc.
Yeah. Gilbert, yeah.
So, like from our end as the ones actually marketing the product, I think one challenge we face is the lack of consumer trust.
Excellent. Lack of trust, yes.
Lack of trust in the sense that we definitely know that the customer knows their welfare is the least on our minds when it comes to the product we are selling.
Yeah.
So as you keep speaking and speaking and speaking and speaking, sometimes what they would come up with is you are just sugarcoating everything, come in, and then that is when all the fine lines start appearing.
Open up.
Because I'm selling this product to me, you are not telling me into details, the maintenance charges, things that will come up, the fine print. Yes, that's the word I wanted to use.
Yeah.
So like most of the time, we sell the product because we know when we really indicate the fine prints, people will not patronize. And then when we have actually gotten them, that is when we start unleashing some of the things that are really characteristic of the products you are selling. And it's at the mind of the consumer. So that trust element is actually gone.
Yeah.
Because of the experiences they keep having. And that's why customers keep moving from one place to the other. So that if you think it is the conditions here are too tough for you to endure, maybe someone would have a featureless, and then they will try that out. If it doesn't work out, they move to another person. So because of that element of what are they hiding from me, it makes it difficult for customers to actually accept your product at the first go.
Yeah.
You do it again and again and again. Sometimes use other personal influences, some personal relationships before you are able to capture the person. So I think that's one difficulty we have, or one challenge we have.
Excellent. Good point. Now, guys, remember that we are identifying these challenges so that we can identify solutions to them, isn't it? Because obviously it's our goal, it's our duty as marketers to actually market these financial products and services. So we're actually identifying these challenges so that we can identify solutions to them. That's a fantastic point that Gilbert just made. In fact, it immediately brought to my mind the question that people. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes, please, we can.
Yeah, sorry about this. I'm so surprised. I'm in the office and the line keeps going. Yeah, it looks like the internet is not even in here, but yeah, I hope it will be stable from now on. Yeah, so I was actually something came to my mind, and I was asking myself, the business people, especially those in financial sector and politicians, who have mostly trust issues, who has the most trust issues? Because it looks like the people do not trust business people at all, especially when you're a CEO or CEO of banks and these financial products, etc. Consumers, when they are dealing with us, they have their concerns at one point, which they are dealing with, i.e. the needs that they're actually looking out for. But they also have another concern, trust, and they're thinking we're out there to actually cheat them, So every consumer is actually interacting with you as the supplier or as the business supplier of the solutions. They have trust in the product itself because obviously they had used it, they know it works, etc. But they have trust issues in the processes of acquiring the product, which Gilbert was actually explaining, all right? So in their minds, yes, product works. Perhaps, you know, they have used it before, somebody has used it before, so they know that product works. But they don't believe that the product costs actually 10 Ghana cedis. In their thinking, the product may even cost just like 2 Ghana cedis, and we have actually padded it to 10 Ghana cedis. So in the minds of the consumer, there is an issue here about trust that we probably want to make undue profit. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Now, that is the reasons why consumers have haggling, you know, behavior, like teso, you know. The rationale behind, you know, people, you know, discussing with you about the price and negotiating or price negotiation, if you actually look at the psychology of it, it's just because they don't believe that the product actually costs what you say it costs. And in their thinking, you are possibly making a lot more money, you know, from the actual cost of the product. So that's another challenge that we have to deal with. How do we actually make sure that when we say the price is 10 Ghana, consumers are prepared to pay 10 Ghana? And where people actually expect that, or they feel that the price is right, and they feel that there is a what we call a congruence between the value of the product and the cost of the product, they don't hardly negotiate for price. Sometimes you can, I don't know whether you have actually met that situation before. There are people, you mention something and they paid. They even pay more than what it is. All right. What does that mean? It means that the expectation of value and the expectation of cost of the item have actually met and even exceeded. And because of that, they are even prepared to pay you more than what you offered or you asked for. But increasingly, we see people haggling over prices, negotiating to the barest minimum. And that actually should tell you that they do not expect that the cost of the product is equivalent to the value you're actually presenting to them. And that's why the behavior of negotiations, haggling, etc. Are you with me?
Yes.
Are you following the debate?
Yes.
So as Gilbert actually pointed out, one of the biggest challenges that we have as marketers of financial products is about trust. Consumers actually think that we are charging them too much for just protecting money or just, you know, making value out of their wealth. They think that we're charging them too much. And also because of that, it affects the trust levels between us and them. How do you eliminate that is our problem, is our objective, is our task, is our role as financial services marketers. How do you eliminate the trust issue and build confidence and trust so that they don't think that we're making undue advantage or we're taking undue advantage of them and we're making too much profit from their wealth? We have to concern ourselves with that question. Good point. All right. Who else has something to say? In fact, it's the notes not here, you know. We are just doing the notes. All right. There's no notes anyway. That's what we're doing. Okay. So next point, challenges in marketing financial services. Yeah. Challenges in marketing financial services. Who else has a point?
Bobby, disloyalty.
Disloyalty. Excellent. In fact, it sits right at the center of millennials and right at the center of modern businesses. All right. People are completely disloyal. Dora, your hand is up.
Kobe, please,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, this question is actually for Gilbert.
Yeah.
He mentioned in his submission that some of the elements are being taken when they are trying to sell their products to the client. Because if they tell them the whole truth about their product, they might not be willing to, purchase or join them or whatever it is. I'm asking, my question is this supposed to be so? Are some of the elements supposed to be hidden from the client?
The consumer. Okay. All right, Gilbert, before I come to elaborate on Bridget's, disloyalty, let's hear you.
Dora.
Yes, Gilbert.
Please, I was speaking from the angle of the customer.
Okay.
Naturally, that is what we get to hear when you are out there trying to market the product. Because majority of the sales people who go out there to sell the product, that is the notion they have, and kind of like invariably end up hiding information. And it's not the best, because at the end of the day, it will come back and bite you. So supervisors, we are always urged to make sure that we communicate to our frontline people who are actually going directly to do that, to, work against such attitudes. Okay. For instance, if I can cite a real life example.
Yeah.
And Joseph, we all work at the same place. So there's this thing that we all had different experiences, but on the same point. We have a corporate account that the monthly maintenance charge depends on the turnover for a month. What I mean is that if someone does withdrawals of up to 10,000 on the account in a month, there's a charge that goes as a maintenance charge. If you exceed that 10,000 to between 10,000 and 150,000, there's a particular amount you pay. And then when you do above 50,000 to infinity, then there is an amount you pay. Now, if the customer, when roping onto the product, is not informed of this, and maybe in a particular month that there was not much turnover on their account, sees a minimum amount being charged, and then the following month there is some increase in activity and they are charged more. Obviously, comparing the two maintenance charges, they would say you have varied your figure and you didn't prior inform them. And both of us had serious issues with some customers who came complaining. So we had to now explain the dynamics of it to them. Now, the point here is that we are supposed to communicate that to the customer at the very time they are signing on the product, that this is what you should be expecting on the account. If you don't, and then it happens like this, you are losing the trust of the person, as you are discussing. So, Dora, to answer you, ideally, it is not supposed to be the case, but sometimes when we are selling the products, we fail to do that, and that's a flaw on our part.
Yes.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Great point. Yeah, so I think that's a very good point, raised. And I was actually even going to ask, just a minute, guys. Hello. Good evening. Marjorie, she's not in at the moment. I'm in the class. So what would you like to know?
She's mine.
All right, guys. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. So yes, so I was gonna ask, Gilbert, just as Dora asked. I mean, what is the rationale behind that attitude? We know that it's not right for them to do, but for us to actually prevent that, we need to look at the root causes. The root causes meaning that what is the rationale behind what they do? In order that in our training and in our facilitation of support, we could actually guard against that and we could advise against that. What do you think are the reasons?
Kobe, can I try?
Yeah, Bridget.
Sometimes they give us outrageous targets. So if, for instance, I'm supposed to open, let's say, 16 accounts for the month, and probably I go to a customer who actually have a need of savings account, but because now you can't just maybe open just a savings account, you have to, because for you to meet your account, your current account, the fact that the person need it for savings, you rather open the current account to the person for you to meet your target. It's really a challenge. So people are mis-selling, and it's really a serious issue with trust. Because if I want a savings and you open a current account for me, which I wouldn't need it, probably my income is low for a monthly deduction. So I think we have to look at a situation, understand the need of the customer, and provide the right solutions to them. It will help us mitigate these issues.
Okay, so it's actually coming from the business model perspective, where management is trying to promote a certain part of the business. Consumers are actually looking for a different kind of the business. And because management is trying to promote a certain part, they are pushing a certain objective and a certain goal target for staff to meet. So there is a clash of interest between management, staff, and customers. That's what is happening, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which means that management has to actually realize that their interest is not supreme. So we are now going back to what we used to call sales orientation, instead of the marketing orientation era, where we say the consumer's need is supreme, consumer centricism. They will just say all these fine words in annual reports and then give staff a completely different, goals and different objectives. And then staff will end up pushing the sales orientation on the consumer. In the end, the consumer is not happy. And that is what is leading to the trust, as Gilbert actually explained, and continuously, and then to a larger extent, is leading to the disloyalty. Because if just like Bridget just said, if I wanted a current account, and I realized that through the transaction you have opened a savings account for me, certainly why should I promise my loyalty to you? Immediately I hear another bank offering fantastic, not even offering something. Once I find that you missold and open a different account, etc., I become dissatisfied. A very small thing that is triggered, a churn, and I move to the other bank. So all these things are actually tied in, undifferentiated, unexcited product and services, lack of consumer trust, and disloyalty are all tied into these challenges that we are discussing. All right. I hope we are very clear on the conversation that we're having now. I hope we are clear on that.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Now, let me go back to, we've said quite a lot, unless someone has something to say. Let me go back.
I wanted to ask a question.
Yeah. Okay. Michael, go.
With this last point that we discussed, is it something that exists as a separate point, or is it part of other points? So, for example, is it something that we can list as a separate point under maybe discrepancy between financial service offerings and consumer needs? Should it stand alone, or should we?
No. it shouldn't stand alone. I mean, to be very fair with you, I mean, to be very fair to the question, Michael, most industries are suffering the same thing, isn't it? All right. Most industries, from the points that we made, when you look at the issue of undifferentiated products and services, all right. Now, let's take, for example, the beverage market, all right, as we speak, currently, those who provide water, bottled water, those who are providing carbonated drinks. I mean, what is the most distinctive part of the market? All right. Generally, you don't see anything distinctive. The only difference that we have is that because those are products, all right, those are very visible. Sometimes you see some change in packaging, some exciting packaging styles, etc. All right. But truly, when you look at the content of the drinks that we actually drink, they are almost the same. All right. Now, when you look at, for example, transportation, let's take, for example, the local airlines that we have, in the country. Now, truly, what would you say are the distinctive features between the players, the major players? All right. You don't see much. Now, the only thing that we can say is that the financial services sector is much more pronounced than the goods and other services sectors, whom in one way or the other, they can turn things around, all right? But with the financial services sector, because first and foremost, it's a mediation service, i.e., they don't produce their own products and services, all right? And they are regulated by a regulator. There's a central point for regulation. Because of that, the uninterestedness and undifferentiatedness is much more pronounced in financial services, all right? The same way, the lack of consumer trust, because the financial services is more to do with people's welfare, people's life savings. And because of that, the issue about trust is higher on the scale than it would be perhaps in the other sectors. All right. And the same as the disloyalty. I don't know whether I've answered your question, Michael.
You have. I just wanted to maybe try and make a point because I think that maybe I am wrong, but then it's something that I would like us to discuss quickly before we move on. I think that it's something that perhaps can exist as a separate point. The only reason I'm asking these questions in detail is because
Michael, pump up a little bit. I think your line keeps fluctuating.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better, yeah.
Yes. I was saying that in case maybe we are asked in an IA or in an exam to listen, explain 5 reasons, 5 financial, 5 challenges that we are faced when trying to market financials. I was trying to see if we can break some.
Obviously, when you're explaining you explain it from financial sector perspective, wouldn't you? And
yes.
And the thing is that usually, when it comes to management theories and management areas, most of the things that you discuss in one management discipline is almost the same in another discipline. All right. It's about the orientation. It's about the kind of examples that you use and the kind of language that you use. That's where most of the time the differentiation comes in. Are you with me? So you will not be far-fetched talking about, trust, consumer trust, in any of the areas when you are discussing it. Certainly, you will discuss it within the sector of concern. All right, that is the sector that you are trying to address, and your examples may reflect on that, just like the examples we are using. Do you get it? Yeah. And for me also, Michael, usually I try not to bring in the thinking of exams when we are having classes. The reason being that it could actually limit you. Are you with me? When you are very exams focused, you are asking yourself whether when you write this, you pass or you not pass. Do you get it? So you try to actually let it stay far away so that we can feel free to discuss it and to have a much broader perspective, when we are discussing them. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So for the IA and exam focus, just push them aside. They will take care of themselves. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool. All right, good point. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. Can you see the slides now? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So session outline, we're looking at the changing financial services industry, with the changing consumer behavior, the economic forces, regulations, etc. Obviously, the reading list are there. So let's have a look at the broader picture of what is happening, within the financial services sector. And a lot of the things that we've been discussing actually fall within here. The changing marketplace of the financial services, industry consolidation, for example. All right. Now, in the past, you realize that prior to prior to the deregulation period, 1992 onwards, the industry was very, very consolidated, and that's where the likes of NIB, Gilbert and Co, they were so powerful. All right. There were some few players in the field. Gilbert, how many were you in the field? You, Barclays, Stan Charts, and how many were the banking, players, for example? Do you have any idea? Bridget? Hello? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, we're in a battle with the internet. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so I was actually, talking about, is the slide still on, or I have to share it again?
You have to share it again, sir.
Okay. Okay, you can see it now. You can see this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right. So yeah, so we're discussing prior to the deregulation, the players in the financial sector were very few. All right. If you take insurance, for example, we have the SIC, obviously pensions, SNIT, we had banking, we had Barclays Bank, GCB, NIB, Stanchart. Who else?
SSB.
SSB, yes.
Social Security Bank.
Social Security, yeah. And then we had a construction bank, right?
Then Stanbic.
Stanbic wasn't there. Bridget, you are millennial. It was Stanchart rather. And that used to go this is this what was the name? Stanchart. It used to be Standard, was this? No, not Standard Bank. Standard Chartered.
Yeah, it's still no.
They rebranded to Stanchart, right?
Yeah.
I think it's still Standard Chartered.
Is it still Standard Chartered?
Yeah, so we just shorten it.
I thought that they did that rebranding to Stanchart. Bridget, you said Stanbic. Stanbic is Abel. Yeah, it used to be NIB. And then Gilbert, there was another investment by, is it Carl Investment or something? Car Bank, there were two car banks, right? I remember.
There was this name, yeah.
Yeah, there were some two car banks. One was investment, one was, in fact, car bank is new. But there was an investment bank other than NIB, And then, of course, there was this Bank for Construction and Housing, BCH.
BHC, Bank for Housing and Construction.
Yeah, Bank for Housing and Construction, exactly.
And cooperative.
Cooperative bank, yeah, cooperative bank, exactly. And then, of course, ADB.
Yes.
ADB. So the industry, there were quite a few players in the industry. And majority of it, not even majority, almost all of them were public institutions, weren't they? They were government-controlled institutions. And then when the deregulation came, for example, you saw within the insurance industry, Metropolitan, I think was it Metropolitan or Enterprise Insurance were the first to actually have entered the market, you know, when the deregulation came. Met Insurance, you know. So we saw an introduction of some, you know, players within the space. And then when it comes to, you know, what we call banking, obviously we saw the entrance of foreign banks, especially, you know, coming from the sub-region, you know, coming into the space. Then when you look at the telcos, for example, you started seeing Ariba. That time, I think that Millicom Ghana, who is now Airtel Tigo.
There was Mobitel.
Mobitel, yeah. Millicom Ghana was Mobitel. Yeah, it was Mobitel. And then there was Westel, right, Dolores?
Yes.
Westel.
It was Celtel.
Yeah. Celtel was the Ghanaian one, right? Was the Ghanaian
Yeah, Celtel, yeah, that became Kasapa, yeah. Celtel.
Yeah.
Hey.
Bridget is lost, right?
Bridget, you are lost. Wow.
Bridget is the thing is like a storybook.
Then you must have been a baby, but I wasn't too grown, but I remember I was not like, I was maybe primary JSS. But you.
No, you see, Dolores, those of us even from JSS, right? Now, when we go to class, we just realize that, hey, look, we are now too old. And you know, when we go for faculty meetings, my colleagues are actually laughing at some of us that we are babies, right? So you go and they say, oh, you finished this, and they start laughing, all right? But when you come to the classroom, like masters or undergrad, no.
I think she was a CEO.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, we are back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was talking about what happens here, and then you go to faculty discussions, meetings, and then the professors and then the other senior guys, they are laughing at you that you are all right. Then you go to master's class, not even undergraduate. Undergraduate, you don't even discuss anything. When you go to master's class and you start discussing just cycle 1992, 93, 95 issues, and then they're watching you like this. Then you
like,
yeah.
What history are you talking about? You're talking about
Seriously, you know. Then you realize that even you that you are SS, that colleagues are laughing at you.
Yeah.
You are completely, you know, old school. I said,
yeah, and the gap is amazing. The gap is
amazing.
amazing. Because I mean, my siblings who I'm just maybe 6-7 years ahead of, it's like we are so separated.
That's it.
The socialization, the everything is like it's so different.
Seriously. You know. So then I go, but I just finished SS 95. Then they go 95.
95, where was that?
It's so interesting, you know. It's so interesting. So yeah, Bridget. So we're talking about just recently, you know. I mean, the liberalization just happened recently, you know. So the banks that we are mentioning, they were just a recent things, but of course they seem very far away.
Yes, come.
You know.
Bring and let me wait for you.
So we're talking about. I think I have to share the screen again.
Come.
So we're talking about the consolidation.
Come, let me wait for you.
So from
Bring the other one.
From the industry consolidation.
In the other leg.
You know, we moved from the industry consolidation to, you know, a much more fragmented, you know, one. I mean, after the liberalization. Are you with me? So when New Orleans, started the deregulation policies, etc., the market started opening up. And even one of the most visible sectors that you can actually see really the liberalization and the deregulation policies is within the communication, the communication sector. All right. Now, if you look at the idea that we used to have only GBC, all right, we used to have only GBC. So you are forced to only listen to GBC radio and watch GTV. That time there was not even GTV, all right? They were all together GBC. So you're supposed to watch Talking Point, you're supposed to watch Obra or Safo Dazi and all those, ones. Compulsorily. I mean, so long as you want to watch TV, these are the things that you have to watch, all right? Then after the deregulation, you started seeing Joy FM and all those stations. And today we are talking about 100 and plus TV channels, all right? We are talking about more than getting to 1,000 radio stations, all right?
1,000.
Yeah, it's incredible. The community radio stations, the regional radio stations, and then the national radio stations, all right? And then, of course, when you look at the banking sector or financial sector, it's a sector that used to have a very few players. Now you're looking at so many players until recently when the cleanup actually happened and some of them actually left the space. You get it? And then, of course, when you look at, sectors such as telecommunication, all right, something that we used to have what is called P&T. Bridget, I don't think that name sounds anything to you.
I have heard the name, but
you heard the name. Do you know the color? It used to be a red company, very popular color. All right, P&T, and then metamorphosed into Ghana Telecom. All right.
Oh, okay.
And now within the space, you see quite a lot of telecommunications. Even within that, we still have a somehow consolidation because we don't have plenty players within that field. So from the industry consolidation, we went to fragmentation, and that fragmentation actually also reflects on the consumer fragmentation. I hope we're all following the conversation.
Yes.
Are we all following it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure that the rest of the class are with us. All right. So we then have industry, what do you call consumer fragmentation, base, and then the fragmented consumer base is actually reflected in the kinds of consumers that we have. I mean, when you look at the space, those days, you have a very top heavy or rich top, and a very small base, and not small, but a very broad, base. When I say that, I mean, where we had the top rich people, and then of course everybody else, all right, until what we call the middle class started emerging in this country. I mean, I don't think that we have in the past had anything that resembled the middle class. And the reason I'm saying that is that, and most of us who actually lived in the days, you realize that when you go to the bank, most of the what we call today branch managers were not the kind of people you see. All right. I remember when I came to UGBS first, and my first financial services class, introduction, and then young people, they get up and they're introduced, they say, I'm a branch manager, I'm a branch manager. And I was like, okay, branch manager of what? Then they said, a bank, of course. And I said, really? And these are young women and young men getting up and saying, oh, then I'll ask them, I'm sorry, but not to be, what do you call, disrespectful, but how old are you? And somebody goes, I'm 25, 23. Branch manager at 25. I mean, Dolores, you can appreciate the response. I mean, at the age of 25, 27, 28, you're a branch manager of a bank.
Yeah.
It didn't happen in my time. I mean, you go to a branch manager, and this is, I'm sorry to use that.
He's a demigod. Oh.
This is a very huge man with his stomach big like this, you know.
It's necessary. The appearance is necessary. The appearance was necessary for the position.
You know, Gilbert, my dad had a factory, so NIB. I'm very close to NIB because growing up, my dad used to take me to NIB offices, right?
Oh, okay.
In Takrade. And whenever we are going to see the NIB branch manager in Takrade, you know, I know the man. The man is so massive that he can't even walk from his office, right? So he's sitting in his chair, and I want to go, oh, Mr. Mensah, oh, welcome. And then he will be doing this, all right? And then he will just be swiveling in his chair, and then, you know, and here am I teaching a group of people completely like nothing to resemble this man that I knew as a branch manager in NIB. And they're telling me they are branch managers of a bank, all right? And I'm like, what's happening? You see, so that is where the sense of, you can appreciate the sense of middle class emergence, all right? And this is not one, this is not two. These are young people in class, bunch of young people in class. Almost all of them are branch managers. You get it? Completely different from the 50-year, 60-year-old, you know, branch manager of NIB that I knew during my dad's, you know, time when he used to take me there. And I was surprised. I was baffled by that. All right, because completely systems are changing. And that actually reflects in the fragmentation of the consumer base. I hope you're following the story. All right.
Yes.
So you realize that the demographics of what we know as a rich Ghanaian or a middle class Ghanaian has changed. All right. Because people start getting riches or making money at the age of 60, 70, when they're about to be dying. That's where you see that, oh, what's the papa being in scouts, though, you know? And the things that actually describes riches, just like, you know, having a car or two cars, you know, owning a home or one home or two homes. These things, people get them when they are just about dying, all right, at the tail end of their of their lives, all right. So the demographics, all right, the demographic depiction of wealth and was actually correspondence to age. Do you get it? So there's no way you could have somebody like me at this age and you're going to describe as a rich person. It will never happen in Ghana. You know, if God will help you to be rich, maybe some point, unless your family is. If your family is rich, then of course the projection goes on. But for you to somehow emerge out of poverty and to be a rich person, you probably are hitting towards your 70, 80 years, just about dying before you experience riches. Maybe even in Lotobina, you know, will transform you quickly. And as some business hits and then quickly transforms you. All right. This is the idea of, you know, consumerism in this country. It was more to do with certain demographics. The same way you would find rich people, and the definition is about men, isn't it? You know, those who had resources or controlled resources, majority of them were men. All right. So for you to, you know, conceptualize a woman who owns, you know, a car or two cars, that woman doesn't actually fit society's description of women. And she's either likely to be some powerful political woman or some, unless of course, again, the family actually owns it, or she will come across as, you know, some kind of a Jezebel who is actually too tough for the society, and because of that, she's making money. I don't know whether I'm making sense.
Yeah.
All right. So
yes.
the fragmentation of the consumer base, we started experiencing it most recently when the society started opening up, and now you see a lot more women at the forefront, having their own businesses, having their own, you know, wealth, having their own investments, and then making their own money, and as a result, being able to buy of their own. In fact, those days, you would expect that even if you're going to do your hair, you have to call your husband. You know, that you've got to do your hair. I mean, that's the society. Do you get it? You couldn't actually think of a woman saying that he's going to buy a car. Who bundled a car? You're a lady. I mean, you're going to buy a car. It has to be maybe your husband buying it for you. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody wanted to say something. Michael. Yeah. Okay. So we're saying that the fragmented consumer base actually started happening, you know, almost recently during the deregulation of the system, where now certain demographics have the, you know, the opportunities to be in certain, you know, places that hitherto were full of men, or were meant for certain class of people in society. All right. And the same way, so once the society started opening up, we started having a fragmented, you know, certain demographics also emerging, and then having a consumption capacity, all right, including young people. You know, that today young people can actually buy phones, all right, without necessarily consulting or their parents having to buy for them, for example. So we started having this fragmented consumer base, more taste, you know, more, you know, wealth, you know, more choices, you know, for people, etc. Right? And then when we come to consumer trust is what we've actually even delved to in a lot more earlier. You know, we're increasingly having a society that trust is very, very minimal. All right. In fact, you don't go into business thinking that the consumer will trust you, or the supplier thinking that the consumer will be forthright, you know, with them. Everybody actually goes into business with a second thought, or a second part of thinking that you're most likely to be cheated. Do you get it? So we put ourselves on guard that you are not cheated in the transaction. Do you get it? So consumer trust over time has waned, and is waned with the system. And when I say it's waned with the system, is because the systems have broken, all right? Systems of family, systems of, you know, the church or the mosques or religious systems have broken down, all right? Cleavages, and when we say cleavages, we're talking about ideological cleavages, or, you know, what do you call, tribal cleavages, etc. All these cleavages, those of you who did sociology, you know, or have some sociology backgrounds, I'm sure it rings a bell. Now, because these systems have broken down, and they were systems of value, all right, they were the custodians of values, all right. Now, tribes didn't just exist. Tribe exists because they protect and they are custodians of certain values that we appreciate, all right. So you belong to a particular tribe, they respect certain values, they have certain values, and you play by that value. Because of cosmopolitanism and because of the urbanization, a lot of us have moved away from our traditional places of birth, all right? And that essentially means that we leave some of these values behind, you know? And once we leave their values behind, because our elders are not there to prompt us and to actually question us why we're not following some of these values, we tend to depart from them growing up. And once you depart from them, what happens? You no longer respect it anymore, you know. And there was a time I was describing, you know, why I came not to eat pork. I don't know whether anybody has similar story to me. All right, I don't eat pork, and for ever since they gave birth to me, unless of course I don't know, but consciously if I know, I'll never take pork. All right, and one of my friends were asking me, why is that? You know, why is it that I always say I don't eat pork? Even when they say, oh, it's nice and things, I definitely say I don't. I say, yeah.
It's the best meat.
Sorry? They say it's the best meat. All right. Who doesn't eat pork? Who doesn't eat pork? All of you eat pork, right?
I think the silence confirms that we eat pork.
Exactly,
Or
we eat pork.
We do.
But I don't eat pork because I'm the
okay.
ninth born, all right? I'm the ninth born of my mother. And from my dad's side, I'm the 10th born because my dad had another issue. So we're 11 in total. And whenever I say I'm the 9th born and 10th born, that's the reason I don't eat pork. People go, what has that got to do with eating pork?
Yes.
Exactly. And the point is that amongst the accounts, some of you, I don't know whether you know that history or that tradition, or because of cleavages and the fact that you've been taken out of your original places, some of these
Yes,
things
we are watered down. We are
exactly.
watered down.
So all these things don't ring a bell again. You know, I'm the 9th born of my mom and 10th born of my dad, which means that I'm a special breed. So, you know, the accounts, the 9th born, which is in Nkrumah, they do certain rituals for you. And for a 10th born, another ritual, all right? Because you are Bedu. So being 9th and 10th, I have 2 rituals, all right, that they have to actually exercise. Every Tuesday, because I was born on Tuesday, every Tuesday I have to eat a tall and every Tuesday, you know. And then on the anniversary days, which is your birth anniversary day, yeah, your mom has to kill goat for your dad or sheep for your dad for giving Bedu, right? So so I used to have 2 what they call, what you call bangles, all right, but they call it carries, carries.
Yeah.
Yeah, those carries, all right. I used to have 2, one for 9th born and one for 10th born, and these carries are made out of sheep skin, and some precious stones, all right. So they put it on here on my bangles, all right, and on anniversary day they'll put it on my legs, all right, and they will do some celebrations, right. Now these are what they depict as for gods, for the gods, celebration for supporting the woman to be able to give birth to 10 people, all right? And then giving the man the strength to be able to give birth to 10 or 9 people. So they do these celebrations. And these things from the Akan, what do you call tradition, pork doesn't come in for such a person, all right? So I never tasted pork. So growing up, I used to go to school and I would be charming people with my carries, when you when you decide to misbehave, I'll just be charming you with my carries. So people were afraid of me. Sort of, So that was the reason, all right. But then obviously as you grow up, you depart from you don't do these ceremonies any longer, etc. But come to think of it, it has impacted on my consumption, behavior. So although you don't do these rituals anymore and all those things, it had fundamentally changed the way I relate to pork, all right? And so it has affected my consumption, my behavior and attitude to pork, which is just a product. Do you get it? So anything pork, I don't eat it, right? So we're saying that the trust issue is a consumer trust, all right, which is a trust towards pork, right? So it means that I have zero trust towards pork and pork products. So the point I'm making is that over time, or there were certain cleavages or certain social systems that actually anchored our trust to the systems, all right? And they anchored our values and trust together to the systems. Now, over time, when these cleavages actually, tear up, or we go further down the line, from these cleavages, we tend to lose that trust and those values, or we tend to lose those values and so those trust issues. So increasingly, we become untrusted of the systems because currently, as I speak, if I have to give birth to 10 people, I'm not going to follow these carries, etc. Isn't it? All right, which means my descendants now would be different from how I was treated. I'm not going to have time to give them, a tour every Tuesday and, that kind of thing. So increasingly, the breaking of the society has meant that people have departed from values and they've departed from trust. So we don't trust systems anymore. And we are increasingly becoming value-free people, which means we do not have recognition towards certain values. Like when somebody opens their door, you're not supposed to actually just enter. People will enter these days. These days, people will leave their things. Maybe they will drop their things. Those days, you're not supposed to touch because they say that the gods can actually strike you. These days, people don't care. They will touch it. Do you get it? In fact, so many things have changed, all right? And so it's making it difficult for institutions to actually inure trust or to actually, promote trust amongst institutions and consumers. I hope I'm making sense. I don't know whether you guys are following the conversation.
Yeah.
Are you following it?
Yes.
Yeah. So these are the reasons why trust are becoming an issue in society, because increasingly we are departing from the systems, we are departing from the values, and that is affecting consumption and business models, all right? These are some of the other one is a new entrant, all right? Remember, we're discussing changing marketplace and the challenges that we face, as marketers. New entrants means that there's obviously every day new products coming into the system. And once new products come into the system, we want to test them, we want to, check them out, etc. And that actually amounts to proliferation of choice, isn't it? Now, gone are the days when Joy News was the dominant one. Unfortunately, City News came in and they broke their front, all right? You would expect that another player comes in and they're likely to break, obviously, Peace FM, all right, came to have a very dominant, position, and they are still leading, all right? Of course, you realize that other players will come in and they will be chipping away. The same way, in our TEF as a business people, we should realize that one of the challenges that we face is the continuous entrance of new players, all right? If you're there and you think you are the leader, forget it. You do not have to have that leadership role and be satisfied with it, because continually people are on your tail. They are checking what you're doing, and they're likely to come up with an entirely different, offering, something that could actually break your front. And we're experiencing that every day. All right. Now Legon is struggling to keep pace, all right, to hold on to its premiership, its leadership, because day in and day out, you have players like UPSA who are doing things new. They're actually coming after you. KNUST is coming after us almost every day, all right? We would like to see ourselves as a leader, but increasingly, you're having KNUST on your tail, you're having UCC on your tail, you're having Central University, you're having Methodist University. Every day, there are institutions that are doing something new. They're coming out with much more innovative approaches, different postures, and things like that. And so, continually, new entrants are making the market very competitive and very challenging to maintain. All right. Any idea, any points to raise, or any question from you? Yeah? Yeah? Any points from anyone? All right. So new entrants, as we said, may actually come from various places, diverse places. They may come directly from your sector, or they may actually come as a quasi sector. They may pick up attitudes or behaviors from one of your sectors and the other from. If you look at fintechs, for example, they are not financial institutions, neither are they technology or telecommunication institutions. They are a mix of the two. And usually when you have companies that come from bi-sectors or multi-sectors, they are very difficult to manage because they may have strength that you don't have. Most banks are actually finding it difficult to contain or to maintain the challenge that Momo actually offers. When MTN came with Momo, a lot of the banks were skeptical and they didn't deal with them, all right? Today, they are chasing them up,
Yes,
and struggling to do
true.
it. So
That's so true.
Yeah. I remember when I invited Ellie from MTN to speak to us. He was telling us the story about Momo. He's the brand manager. He was telling us the story about Momo. He said, "Doc, we approached banks, they rejected us. Barclays Bank, GCB, name them. All right. In fact, some of them talked that they were even joking. But you won't stay in your telecommunication. You won't stay in your data and your calls. You will say you want to do finance. What knowledge do you have in transferring money, etc. That kind of thing. So, but eventually, when they put their systems together and said they will still do it, in the very short period, they were there, and central bank had to even learn from them how to regulate the area, because the central bank didn't also have expertise. All right, because the central bank is not into telecommunication. All right, so when industries actually come from multi-sectors, they are far more difficult to control than even industries that would actually come from your same sector. So it is difficult to have new entrants, who have a leveraging on technology, who have a certain knowledge form that you do not have. They will take the leadership role and you'll be struggling to catch up, all right? Currently, the amount of money that we're actually transacting on Momo, when you look at the reports from the central bank, it's unbelievable.
Yes.
It has stripped checks, it has stripped almost everything. And we don't seem to be slowing down. We seem to be going up and up. In fact, people are actually even looking forward to being able to transfer 10,000, 5,000 on Momo. All right? Yeah. On Momo. Huge business transactions. People want to do it on Momo. Why? Because ease of transaction and then quick accessibility, etc. So we have to be mindful of new entrants, coming into our industry, especially those who are leveraging on technologies that we have no idea about, And that's why one of the reasons why the issue of Bitcoin has become so tenacious so much difficult for the world banking system to deal with. And some players, some stakeholders have bent on paying money to make sure that countries, that is government and world bodies, would not allow Bitcoin to actually emerge. Because if it does, it can collapse most of our banking sector, especially if they do not adapt. So the people who are actually behind the foundations of banking, all right, and foundations of most of the financial services sectors are actually doing all that they can for global, government to actually keep tabs on Bitcoin, because it can spell doom for almost all of us. Are you with me? So these are some of the dynamics and then the politics of some of these issues. Any questions or contribution?
So now the banks, we have taken advantage of the Momo, and now we register people with our system there. We do everything. We have formed partnership with them now. So a customer can come and deposit money, withdraw money, and put it on the Momo at the same bank. So we are getting cheap liabilities from them, which at first we are just losing it to these techos.
Okay.
And now we are also shining our eyes.
You're shining your eyes. All right. Good point. All right. Okay. So let's see the changing financial service industry. We're saying bank selling and underwriting. Yes, sir. Bank selling and underwriting new products. Obviously, we're talking about bank assurance, investment product, transacting, processing, etc. Yeah, we now have offshore outsourcing, which has changed the economics of service delivery for financial services. Is there any bank or financial services in this country that actually use offshore services? Or some of you do? Like elsewhere, people use, call centers from Bangladesh or from
Yes, we do.
Is Stanchart not using it?
Stanchart, eh?
I think Stanchart does.
After
Okay.
After that, you guys, you are from South Africa, so or you use
we used to use the accent from India. Our call center was in India, and they were calling our people. So when you receive a call, they have that accent.
But what is the rationale behind the continuous use of India as the outsourcing base?
They are best in terms of IT infrastructure. So it's cheaper there using them. I think so.
Yeah, it makes sense because obviously the cost of managing the IT infrastructure for call centers, and you know, I remember when I was in T-Mobile, each call that comes in, all right, it cost the company, you know, £5 per call that is coming in, and so companies will actually look at, you know, countries that have a very cheaper, you know, telecommunication cost, and then outsource. So majority of firms wanted to outsource their calls to India because you compare £5 per call and almost like maybe 50 cents or no 50 pence per call to in the case of India. Certainly, you make the math. Nobody tells you where to send your, you know, outsourcing call center to. So these are some of the things that actually inform the decisions. And of course, in terms of wages, all right, obviously, I'm sure that perhaps they may be paying much more lower in terms of wages in India. But I don't know the comparison between India and Ghana. Where would you think that they will be paying cheaper wage?
I'm not too sure of it. But since I joined the business from Barclays to ABSA, they've been using them.
Okay. All right. Any other point, any other view? The use of outsourcing, you know. Okay. And then, of course, industry concentration. We've talked about, you know, smaller number of banks controlling the credit card market. Ours, the banks were not smaller number, they were huge, but obviously since the cleanup, you know, we now have a very concentrated, you know, and it's still not concentrated because our banks are still they're about 15 now, right?
Kind of.
Universal banks?
Yeah, universal banks.
23.
23, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we still have a lot of banks. We still have a lot of banks.
It was 24 and then GHL and FNB.
They merged.
FNB took over.
Yes.
Somewhere in May this year.
Acquisition. Oh, okay, cool. All right. Okay, so changing consumer behavior. Obviously, like as we were saying, the consumer behavior currently is changing towards more, you know, I mean, if you look at these two, convenience or safety, where do you think the Ghanaian consumer tilts towards? Convenience or safety? Or is it both? Where is the priority? Where do our people really place their priority on? Is it convenience? Or
you mean is it our customers?
Yeah,
the people who bank.
Yeah.
Before, I think it was convenience. I think now in this era, maybe it will be safety, security more. But before, convenience to where they live, to where they have their businesses, convenience of knowing a relative in that bank, and all that. But I think now that will not be the first thing that comes to their mind. No.
I think I agree with you. If you look at the behavior of our banks or our financial services, at some point, you know, everybody was driving towards online, mobile apps, all those things. All right. Which means that the consumer behavior was towards convenience. People wanted to have things easy, you know. So when players see that, they try to provide a lot more access, you know, until this bank cleanup, and then until COVID, which I think a lot more people have becoming much more safety conscious, protection of their wealth. And so you see people trying to move, their wealth into certain industries. I think there was an oscillation of, wealth from financial sector into more real estate kind of thing. I don't know whether you guys observed it. Did you see movements? People were moving their finances to real estate.
A lot of people, yeah.
And majority of people, not even real estate as in, they buying, people
on a large
push
scale.
more money. Yeah.
Acquisition and all.
Yeah. So that tells you that safety became paramount, all right? Protection of their wealth as opposed to convenience became paramount, and therefore they were looking for places that they can be sure of their investment and of their monies, So the changing consumer, from our perspective, could see that a lot more people are now hedging towards safety. How could you give them assurances that their money is safe? It should be one of our concerns as marketers, all right? So yes, at a point we're looking for convenience, and we still have to provide a convenience, but convenience itself opens itself up to security issues, because so long as you have so many outlets that people can access, then it means that you have so many loopholes that the bad nuts can also tap into, isn't it? So somebody opens their online banking and they forget to actually close it, So there's a password lapses in there. Somebody goes onto their mobile banking and they leave their phone somewhere, and somebody is actually getting access to the phone and they leave their account open, all right? Somebody actually, phones call center and they're asking for their password and they are in Trotro and they are mentioning password. Oh, my password is 1962. Do you get it? So these are some of the things. So in as much as we provide convenience, all right, remember that we compromise safety and security, because if it's only one point of access, we are almost likely to be much more guarded and protecting them. That when we have so many points of access, we tend to forget them. I mean, to be very honest with you, a lot of us have so many passwords, and because of simplicity, because we end up forgetting password to this file searcher, we create only one, and then we use it to access everything, isn't it?
Yes, so that's what I do.
Yes.
so the thief gets hold of one, and that's it.
And that's it. Yes, he's everywhere.
So this is a challenge we have. The more convenience we provide, the more we actually become security vulnerable. So we must actually think about that. Okay, if the consumer wants convenience, and that means providing multi-channels so that they have access, how do we actually do that without compromising safety and security, and making sure that they can still be having access to these channels and still have a very secure and protected services? That has to be our challenge, and that has to be our objective, to make sure that, yes, we cannot actually say because of safety and security, we tell the consumer, now you can only have what do you call a bank statement, which is physical or which is paper. No, the customer wants a bank statement, e-copy. But don't forget, if they have a e-copy and they open the bank statement and they don't close it, somebody gets hold of their phones and they can actually have access to their banking details and they can make use of that. So how do we still provide that access and still get them a very secure environment? It must be our concern, all right? So the changing consumer behavior is moving towards convenience, but also is moving towards safety and security because of what has happened, because of a lot of fraudsters now. In fact, the Momo fraud has made a lot more consumers much more alert, all right? So we have to actually, think about that daily as financial services marketers. how do we still provide convenience and still provide safety and security at the same time so that people will not be compromised, yeah? Our services will not be compromised, right? Of course, the population is getting older, but unfortunately in our case, or is it fortunate? Population is getting much younger, all right? And there's a continuous problem of what we call the youth bulge, all right? Plenty youth, no job, you know? And plenty youth, no job is a concern of business. We should remember that it's our concern because if they don't have jobs to do, they will do Momo fraud, all right? They will call you and say, oh, I've sent you 100 Ghana cedi, please send me back here. You know, so increasingly, we're having a younger population that has no job. And that must be a concern to us because we would, you know, be in trouble, you know, for not finding their job. And the point is that if they don't find job, how do they get money to save, to do insurance, to do investment, to do, you know, pension schemes, etc.? Do you get it? So as a financial services industry, we have to be mindful of the population, the dynamics of the population. And when you have a much more younger generation too, not only the idea of job creation, you know, but the idea of also having irresponsible society, you know, because of the problems that they have. Now, another changing consumer, you know, we have increasing variance in wealth distribution, and it is true, all right? Despite the picture that I painted that Ghana has changed, which is tremendously, everybody appreciate that. The top heavy that we used to have and everybody else has changed. That those days we have 1% Ghanaians who were so rich and everybody else was on the bottom, all right? Things have changed. Now we have a middle class and clearly most of you, at least you own, you know, a car or you own smartphones, you have television. In our time, television was a luxury, you know. In fact, some of the stories, when you remember them, it's so sad. You know, there was this woman who we used to live together around our area. She used to have a video, you know, DVD. It wasn't DVD, it was this video cassette. You remember those of you who remembers those video cassettes? VHS. Yeah, Bridget, I don't expect you to know it.
Yeah.
How many of you remember VHS, right?
Yes.
The one they call PM Uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah, VHS.
The deck, you call it.
Yeah, the deck, the video deck.
The deck, yeah, it's the deck.
Hey, this woman will let us fetch water. We'll go fetch water. Fetch water for her. Go and fetch water for the mom. Go and fetch water for the in-laws. Because you see, she has a Rambo. I don't know how many of you used to watch Rambo. Rambo and Commando. She used to have that video.
Oh,
and you want to watch Rambo. This woman, for Rambo, we have to fetch water for her, go and fetch water for the mom, go and fetch water for the husband was a seaman, you know, I'm from Takrady, so we have a lot of seamen. Now, after fetching this plenty water in the evening, then she will arrange. Those of you who fetch like 10 buckets, you sit in front. If you did two, you will stand. You know, you will stand. Ghana has changed, you know. I tell you, Ghana has changed. Look, for Rambo, you have to fetch 10 water. 10. And then that's what will qualify you to sit in front. Then, so we'll do it in that order. Then, of course, you don't want to watch only one video. So tomorrow, you want to watch Commando. You have to fetch water again. You know. So this is the issue. So but the wealth creation has changed again. We're saying that that variation has changed. But we still have a problem in terms of wealth distribution, all right? Even the middle class that we're talking about, the middle class Ghana that we're talking about, there is still continuous issue of savings, all right? The middle class that we have are the ones who can just have, or majority of people will say hand to mouth, yeah? They are middle class, all right? They have, let's say a vehicle, etc. But proper savings is not there, all right? The savings is fragile, all right? Immediately one issue happens to you, maybe just like my friend, Lord has lost his father. Immediately something happens, true, all the savings that you've made, gone. Are you with me? So even when it comes to the distribution of wealth, we are still hanging somewhere below the normal, all right? And then, of course, we're talking about approximately 70% of Ghanaians do not have a bank account. That issue, we have to query it, right? And remember, we're discussing the changing consumer, right? To what extent has the consumer changed, in Ghana, we're discussing. But we said that the emergence of Momo, or the mobile money and the mobile account, and recently the vice president actually launched, the portability, isn't it? Where, those interoperability, etc.
Yeah.
Still, we have a situation where we're not recognizing the mobile account as bank account. Do we recognize it as a bank account?
No, it's not a bank account.
You see? So we said that the mobile payment and the mobile system is what is going to bridge the gap. That's what we kept saying, isn't it? That is going to be a unifying tool to bridge the gap between the unbanked and the banks and things like that. It will make the unbanked, bankable. We brought so many terminologies, all right, especially those of you who are in the space, so you can actually tell me more about that. Yet, the Momo account and things are not considered as bank account, all right? That when they ask people to bring their bank account and they submit their Momo, I don't know, Gilbert, whether you guys accept them, and things like that. What's the conditions? What are the issues around these issues? Yeah? Who can actually answer that? Why are we still struggling to actually determine the mobile account and then the mobile platforms as a conventional bank detail? What are the issues? Anyone?
The issue of
the emergence of the mobile platforms and then the mobile accounts. So we said that they were going to bridge, this bankable and non-bankable, and that, the 70% of Ghanaian adults who do not have bank account, we were saying that the mobile platforms or the mobile account would help bridge this. Yet we do not see the traditional banks accepting these as bank accounts. And people have been complaining where they work and they ask them to bring their bank account and they give their Momo accounts. Institutions are not accepting them, as a traditional account numbers. And I'm asking, what are some of the issues? Why are we still having these conversations?
Doc.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think the first point might be the issue of what goes into having an account opened. KYC regulations you would have to go through. Rigorous, just for having, I think someone is.
Yeah, the background.
I mean, the rigorous KYC regulations you have to go through to have an account open. I don't think that is what you would go through to have a mobile money account opened.
Yeah.
So, well, until the banks are convinced that maybe they could have everything on the customer, process, unless, of course, maybe if it gets to the point where maybe the banks would acknowledge such, then it means we have to do an enhanced due diligence, like taking more information on them before we might accept it as such. Because, I mean, even in this state, we are having people who have the ability to transfer from wallet to account, from account to wallet. I mean, banks are being hit now.
Yeah.
People are circumventing the system and they create dummy balances on accounts and then they sweep onto their mobile wallets and then by the time you're chasing them, you are not able to. So even for now, banks are having challenges with some of these existing processes. So I'm not sure they are ready to just accept such things until they are foolproof sure that.
Okay. But what are the challenges of not solving it? Because clearly we know the issues, like the things that you're talking about, you know, the comprehensive, you know, the assurances that the person who's actually opening an account, mobile account, had actually gone through a very rigorous process that could assure the traditional institutions that, yes, this is a credible account we can deal with. Obviously, we know that that is not the case. So what is preventing the institutions, you know, from doing the right thing so that other traditional institutions will take these things as a genuine or credible account to deal with? What are the issue points?
Even with the telcos, if someone wants to upgrade its status, like from just being a normal subscriber to, let's say, a merchant or something, they demand that the persons come to the bank to take a statement before they can even upgrade them. So now I think they are working hand in hand with the banks now. Even they also have KYC issues. I did my service with Airtel. And it will surprise you that sometimes this account, the postpaid account, you go there and you don't have their contact details, where they are residential. So
you can't even trace them.
You can't even trace them. So I can't remember one of my first assignment, we were made to call customers to update their postpaid records. So I think issue with KYC, it runs across both telcos and the banking system. And fraud and theft. It's all, maybe that is the challenge that we are facing.
Okay, good point.
Because people can actually do a mobile banking setup with a stolen number account to pay money from somebody's account into their own account through diversion. So it's some way.
Which means the idea that your mobile money, I mean, your mobile SIM card must be registered with your passport, etc., is still not effective.
It's still not effective because people believe that whatever information you are giving them is accurate or is really you.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. All right. Thank you. Okay. So let's wrap up. I mean, it's 6 o'clock. So yeah. So some of the sources of the changes. All right. So some of the changes that we have actually discussed about the consumer is regulation. Obviously, as we said, regulation, in fact, is one of the most dominant source of change, consumer change. And that's why we always say that government policies are crucial for business survival, all right? Because if governments haven't actually moved towards deregulation, in fact, if we hadn't moved towards democracy, and as a result of the democratic dividend, move towards liberalization and deregulation, I don't think most of us will be having internet in front of us here and then be discussing of having lectures online. Do you get it? Internet would have been so expensive that we couldn't afford it because the players were few or were supposed to be few, which was P&T. And I remember the first time I heard telephone was my sister's husband was a seaman, and she's been alerted that the man was going to call her. So she has to arrange for receiving the call. This message was passed on 1 month, 1 month before the call, you know. And on the D-Day, we had to go to P&T Intercredit to wait for the call. Look, you will sit there for almost the whole day, from in the morning, like 7, 8 o'clock, sitting there waiting for a call. The call can come somewhere like 8 p.m. That is when the night shift people are coming. You can't say you are going home. When the call comes, they should call you. My friend, you are not serious. So you have to sit down till the time the call will come. So you can imagine how expensive such a call is. And this call is not going to be 10 minutes follow. It's not going to be 5 minutes. It's just about a minute or two. That's it. But you have to take 1 month to prepare for such a call. So you're laughing. So regulation, in fact, policy transforms a lot of things. So most of the changes that we're talking about are as a result of regulation, all right? Policy changes. Even if you look at the banking sector and the advent of what we call the new generation banks, the Nigerian banks coming in, it was as a result of regulation from both ways. Nigeria passed a regulation of capitalization, and those who didn't have enough, recapitalization had to be closed, or they had to make a journey towards our end where our capitalization wasn't much, all right? So we ended up benefiting from Nigeria's policies of cleaning its own financial sector. And then we also had similar, issue. So you see that regulation is one of the most important source of change, all right? And that's why every country, when they say that if the country will develop, it actually sits on policy. What is the government policy to open up the market and to open up the economy? It's one key thing, regulation. Economic forces, all right? So economic forces, we're looking at even the idea of multinationals, all right? NMCs, national organizations, and their movement to and from countries. We're looking at exchange rates, and how they affect, economies. We're looking at, central bank, what they call monetary policies, etc. All these are forces, economic forces that actually impact on sources, or they are sources of change. They impact on the consumer behavior. We've talked about the declining consumer loyalty, all right? Increasingly, consumers have become disloyal, and they've become skeptical of business, and its attitude. And that is actually fueling, growth as well, because it's fueling new businesses. I mean, the emergence of social media is because continuously people became apathetic to traditional media. And they thought that elites in society are using traditional media to regulate us, all right? So when social media came, where people can make their own story and pass it on, or they can see something happening and take a photo and pass it on. Authorities will say their version, and they will say, you are lying, I have a video of it, and then they will tell their version. So the increasing use of social media is as a result of people's mistrust of the system, the elite system that they thought that it been controlling, and it not been, representative of us. And that's why a lot more people, they try to shun traditional goods and services when they hear that somebody has made their version. So people will say, oh, I'll buy it from the young lady who just produced this, because at least she's a young lady. She's not going to look for, profiteering, all right? And therefore, they would actually buy from them than buying from the corporate firm. So some people may want to actually use savings and loans, not because of anything, but because they want to use it as a spite of the traditional banks, because they think that the CEOs in traditional banks make too much money. They drive big cars and they will, water on them, and they don't respect. And because of that, he will decide to go and put his money in savings and loans, where they think that people will not abuse their wealth. But unfortunately, they also start misbehaving, and people become completely apathetic to them as well. So declining consumer loyalty is like that. You know, people are actually suspicious of the businessmen's behavior and then businesswomen's behavior. And so they try to spread their customer or their loyalty across other places. Technology has been phenomenal. I mean, we can't even say much about how technology has been a source of change. We're all experiencing this, all right? Now, the idea that people are moving towards digital spaces, and as you said, during COVID, we've experienced a shift towards e-product, and something that the banks have spent or the financial services have spent so much money, you know, trying to push people onto the digital space just because of COVID. A lot of people are going there. But they wouldn't have been able to be there if the technologies were not there, all right? If we didn't have the apps and we didn't have the e-commerce, you know, systems and we didn't have the QR codes, how would people actually consume digital products? It wouldn't be possible. So technology has been a massive source of, you know, change, you know, within the space. So when we're actually discussing the way consumers are changing, we also look at the technology availability and technology acceptance and affordance that actually facilitates those changes, all right? We must actually be mindful of that. So these are some of the things that the economic forces, we've described it already. So these are some of the things that, you know, we can actually talk about, you know, in this session. We have generally looked at the changes, the challenges of marketing financial services. We've looked at the difficulties that we find as a marketing people to actually market financial services to people. And that actually draws from, one, the changing behavior of the consumers themselves, the societal changes. We've talked about cleavages, all right? The idea that traditionally we are changing. We no longer even know our family members, all right? How many of you know your Ebusepein? You don't know that, all right? Let alone to talk about Ebusepein coming to your house at dawn to tell you that you are not following certain family practices, all right? So those cleavages, the breakdown of them, have also presented to us some kind of trust issues and some kind of value issues. You know, we no longer follow them. And so we've become so cosmopolitan. And that is actually impacting on our consumption as people, all right? And especially our consumption of financial products. Yes, so we've said all these things. And I'm sure you have understood, you know, the changes within the market and how that changes actually impact on our decision as marketing managers, you know, and our approaches as marketing managers. Thank you. Any question or contribution? Any questions or contribution? Now we are 9 strong people in class. Usually I hear from very few people. So next time I'll try and be mentioning names. You know, if you don't, Kokui, last time you were talking, this time you didn't talk much. You know, Susan, most of you, I will be calling on you personally to make contributions. So be prepared for next session, right? Okay, thank you so much, guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, for your time.
Thank you. I hope you understood the session very well.
Yes, please, we did.
Okay, excellent.
It was good.
Thank you, Dora. All right, Dolores, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please, on the issue of the recording and then the slides.
Yeah.
Maybe if we could get the slides before the class, we could also read and prepare.
I'll forward all the slides to you guys. All right. And then my challenge is the recording. The recording is big, so maybe one of you should come in. I don't know how to convert it into smaller size to